We started the show talking about the coaches and GMs at the Combine, and they're there to answer questions, but really not answer the questions. They want to give you sort of the feeling that they answered the question. And I was watching yesterday, and Judy, Battista, the senior national columnist and co-host of the Insiders on NFL Network, did a great job. And she did a great job because she kept it really simple when you would have a coach who would talk about what they need to do next year. The Bengals, Zach Taylor telling everybody, hey, we can't have a slow start. And then, we got to make sure we don't do that. And then I think Judy just said, how? And you could just see the look on his face like, wait a minute, we're not supposed to ask tough questions like that. And I said to Fritzy, reach out to Judy because I appreciate that. It was a right to the point question. Don't let him reload there. And I loved it. So thank you for doing that. Give us your sort of thought process of how you're trying to get something out of people who really don't want to give you something.
Well, I mean, I really wanted to know the answer myself, because we always talk about, like, in the case of the Bengals, slow starts. Like, we talk about it, like, I feel like every year. And so I was like, how do you, like, you got to get over this. This is what's stopping you from getting there. And so, I mean, why wouldn't you ask that question? Like, well, what are you going to do? To his credit, he answered the question, right? He said they're looking at all aspects of the off-season program and changing training camp and everything. So I give Zach a lot of credit for actually answering the question.
Now, you were talking to not only Zach Taylor, Andy Reid, Omar Khan, Troy Vincent, Rich McKay for the competition committee. We'll get to that, the Tush Push competition committee, in a moment. But what is the number one overriding question aside from the Tush Push at the Combine, in your opinion?
Well, aside from the rules stuff, it's just the quarterback musical chairs. What's going to happen with Matthew Stafford? What about Aaron Rodgers? What are they going to do with Sam Darnold in Minnesota? They're going to franchise tag him. They're going to try to sign him. So I think just there's so many teams that need quarterbacks. There's just not that many of them, especially there's not that many top level ones in the draft. So how are all of these veteran quarterbacks going to move around? Kirk Cousins is another one. That's really, I think, the dominant topic here.
If I'm a Rams fan, how nervous should I be?
I think they still want Matthew Stafford. I think the question is, can they, come to an agreement on the money? There's no question there is interest in Stafford outside of Los Angeles, right? I mean, there, again, so many teams that need quarterbacks. So there will be a market. The Rams ideally would like to keep him, but the Rams and Stafford are like on different timelines, right? They have a otherwise very young roster that is ahead of schedule. I mean, they were ahead of schedule last season, getting into the playoffs, and they've got this, older, still very, very good and productive quarterback, but they're just not aligned on the timeline. I still think he will end up staying in Los Angeles, but I feel less certain of that than I did, a week ago.
Because we keep saying, or I hear analysts saying, hey, a team that's ready to win now needs Matthew Stafford. I go, well, the Rams are ready to win now.
Yes.
So the Rams should acquire Matthew Stafford. Like I would say, it's not my money, but 2 years, $100 million or whatever.
Right.
Can you keep it friendly and keep him because you're a few plays away from being in the NFC title game when you would have hosted the title game?
Yeah, there's no question that the Rams are a better team if Matthew Stafford is the quarterback next year than if they have practically anybody else that could conceivably be their quarterback next year if he goes, right? I mean, if he goes, who's their quarterback next year? Everybody keeps saying like, well, what about Aaron Rodgers? Well, respectfully, I'd rather have Matthew Stafford at this point. He's much better and he's been more productive recently. So I agree with you. If I'm the Rams, you're looking for a quarterback like Matthew Stafford. On the other hand, are they looking at it a little bit more long-term and saying, the capital we could get back if we trade Matthew Stafford to, the Raiders or the Giants or whatever team comes up, does that help us then fuel the pipeline for years and years to come? We'll see.
It's strange when the Colts talked about there's an open competition at quarterback. And the first thing I thought of, Judy, was Matthew Stafford. Play half the season, half your games indoors. That's a team that won 8 games. They've taken a chance on Matt Ryan and Phillip Rivers before. He's a better version of those quarterbacks, it feels like. And he might be worth 2 wins to get you into the to the playoffs. I don't know if they've officially bailed on Anthony Richardson, but it just, the fact that it's an open competition, is it truly an open competition with the Colts?
Right. That is my question, because who is coming in to provide that open competition with Anthony Richardson? They want it to work with him. He was their draft pick, so they are invested in him. Many people in that building are invested in him making it. And so I do wonder, when you look out there, again, who are they going to bring in as the veteran, right? They had Joe Flacco. Like, who are they bringing in who is a real competitor to Anthony Richardson? And keeping in mind that ultimately, yes, maybe it's an open competition, but what they really want is to spur Anthony Richardson to raise his level. So again, who do you bring in who can spur Anthony Richardson to raise his level, but not really supplant Anthony Richardson, big picture?
We're talking to Judy Battista, NFL Network, co-host of The Insiders on NFL Network. How awkward is the situation asking the Ravens about Justin Tucker?
Yeah, I have to say, Eric DeCosta, the general manager, said more than I expected. I thought they would defer completely to the NFL. There's an NFL investigation, so we're not going to say anything. It's an active investigation. We're not going to say anything. And for him to say the number of allegations is concerning was frankly further than I expected him to go. They obviously know that those questions are coming, so I don't feel particularly bad for them that they're getting questioned about it. It is, it's troubling because it just came out of nowhere, it feels like, and now it has ballooned. The number of allegations just is growing and growing and growing. And again, the NFL is investigating. And I mean, as a football player, he is an all-time great. Maybe the greatest kicker in the game ever. But certainly this has cast a pall over the Ravens. It sort of makes you go back and think, like, when he was struggling on the field in the middle of the season, like, is this why? We don't know the answer to that, but you do wonder what the Ravens are going to do, because he was struggling at kicking. Now there's this. Does this give them the opening to move on from him? Do they stick with him? Do they think that this will all be resolved and that will also resolve his struggles on the field? Very, very interesting. And again, I thought Eric DeCosta went further than I ever expected them, even just admitting that it's concerning.
Yeah, this isn't Justin Tucker from 5 years ago where he was not expendable. He's expendable now. And
Right.
the fact that John Harbaugh said, hey, we're looking at kickers, should tell you everything about this. It got to recently where it was uncomfortable or awkward. You're trying to ask the Browns about Deshaun Watson. I don't even know if that's a topic anymore with the Cleveland Browns.
It's not really a topic. He tore his Achilles, as you know, and then he re-tore it, in the middle of his rehab process. So that essentially, we think, keeps him out for this season. It's not really a topic. They pick very high in the draft. Number 2, they need a quarterback. Whether they take a quarterback at number 2 is a different question, or get one in free agency. But it's impossible to imagine that Deshaun Watson will play again for the Cleveland Browns. Yeah. And I think a bigger question is, like, then what happens? The Browns are, even if he stays on the roster, if the Browns move on from him, who takes him on, if anybody?
Is there a place in the league for Russell Wilson as a starter?
I think so, and it could still be Pittsburgh. I think so. Omar Khan, the general manager, told me yesterday that first of all, they don't have a quarterback under contract right now, so everything's on the table for them. They got to get one, they got to get 2, but he said their preference is to have it be one of those 2 guys, Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, and so. There was a lot of sentiment for Justin Fields coming out of training camp early in the season, even when Mike Tomlin made the switch and it paid off initially, and the Steelers really took off when they went to Russell Wilson. There was still a great deal of sentiment that Justin Fields hasn't yet reached his ceiling. So I do think there is a role for Russell Wilson somewhere, and it may very well be in Pittsburgh again.
All right, competition committee, you're well versed with this, of what's the process if the Green Bay Packers bring it to the competition committee, I'm guessing, to say we want to outlaw the tush push. So what's the process now?
So teams can submit rules proposals, and those go before the owners. The competition committee can sort of endorse it, can put their weight behind it. No pun intended in the case of the Tush push, but so they can sort of say to the owners, yeah, like, we agree with this. We think you should go. Here's the thing about that play. There is no real injury data on it, which is a good thing. There haven't been injuries. It's just not run that often. So there's not a wealth of injury data on it. If there were serious injuries happening on that play, there is no question the league would say, we got to get this play out of the game, the same way as you've seen other plays get removed from the game because of injuries. So if quarterbacks were getting blown up every time they run this play and, dislocated shoulders, you would certainly see a push from the league to get it out of the game. Right now, I think it's sort of more based on the possibility that there could be injuries. And there's also just people who feel like this doesn't really look like a football play. Maybe it looks too much like rugby. Why are we letting, the quarterback get pushed from behind? We don't really let that happen. So it's more sort of based on nebulous stuff rather than like hard and fast data. You need 24 votes from ownership to change rules. That is a high bar for everything, even things that you think are no-brainer rules changes. 24 votes to get them agree on anything is hard. So I think that's a very high bar. I'd be surprised if they ban it. And there's also the sentiment from a lot of teams that's just like, well, stop it. Like, if you want to end this play, figure out how to stop it. And the darkness in me says, like, if you want to see this play go away, like the first time a quarterback gets really injured on that play, that will be the end of that play.
Yeah, I don't understand why the NFL brought back that you could push somebody from behind, in 2005? I don't know what the impetus was for that.
I don't either. You're also not allowed to pull somebody, right? Like,
Yeah.
if a running back is stopped, you can't grab his jersey by the chest and pull him over the goal line. Look, I mean, the Eagles found a niche in the rules that they could exploit, and they're outstanding at it. And let's be honest, part of the reason that teams want to get rid of it is A, their defenses can't stop it, and B, their offenses are not adept at running it themselves. If more teams were good at this, I bet you would not see more teams calling for it to go. But I think when you talk to defensive coaches, a lot of them are just like, listen, we got to figure out a way to stop it.
Yeah, but Judy, if the Eagles weren't a good team and they were the Titans, nobody would care about this play.
That is correct. The fact that it is so effective and that they are scoring so many touchdowns on it is why it has attracted attention. And again, if other teams could do it as successfully as they do it, I don't think you would, you'd be hearing this.
If the Buffalo Bills could run it as successfully, they would have played in the Super Bowl.
And the reason other teams don't do it is because they don't practice it the way the Eagles do. First of all, the Eagles have unique personnel, right? I mean, Jalen Hurts squats, whatever he squats, 600 pounds, something ridiculous. So he is uniquely built to execute this. They have linemen who are outstanding. They have a great offensive line. And they practice this, right? I mean, this is a play that they run. If other teams were as successful, I don't think you would hear this, hue and cry about we got to get rid of it. And certainly if defenses were stopping it, nobody would care.
If I gave you over under 3.5 quarterbacks first round, you would take the
probably the under, I guess, which is so low for a draft. But the two, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, are so. When you talk to people who know this much better than I do, for sure, they're so far ahead. Cam Ward seems to be ahead of everybody right now. I don't know how many more you're going to get in the first round, but again, there are so many teams that are desperate. I think we'll probably have a better sense after the pro days when we see these guys throw to familiar targets and you can really see how they are. And certainly after free agency, when we see, if the quarterback veteran market gets scrambled, then see who's left. But I don't have a great feel about this class beyond those two.
Is Tom Brady going to be at the Combine?
I have not seen him. He is from everything everybody has said, he's very involved, though, in Raiders decision-making, which is exactly what Mark Davis said he wanted when he brought him on as a minority owner, that he wanted him involved in decision-making, especially selecting the next quarterback. So I don't know if Brady's actually going to be up in the stands with his binoculars, watching the bench press. I don't know if we're going that far, but certainly his voice is loud in that building.
Yeah, but I would think the interviewing process, being involved in that, I don't know.
I would bet when they bring in the kids for the 30 visits, guys, that for the visits to the building, I would bet that Tom Brady will take part in some way in those meetings.
Do you think Brady will still be the best quarterback in Las Vegas this season?
Yes. Yes. I'm happy that he's happy in retirement and he's doing well. But if Brady put on a uniform right now, would you bet against him? I would not.
I would not. Judy, keep asking how and why and just simple questions. One word. Great. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dan. My pleasure.
That's Judy Battista, senior national columnist, co-host of the Insiders on NFL Network.